Welcome to the Village Talks. This is a space where physiology meets lived experience, where we talk honestly about the body, the nervous system, relationships, and the real questions families are asking without fear-based narratives or a one-size-fits-all answer. We're your hosts. I'm Dr. Jaimy.
And I'm Dr. Brittany. We're chiropractors, perinatal specialists, and humans who work closely with families through preconception, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and early parenthood. Whether you're preparing for pregnancy, currently pregnant, newly postpartum, raising a little one, or supporting someone who is, you're in the right place.
Let's get into today's conversation.
Welcome back to the Village Talks podcast. This episode, we are doing a little bit of a longer one, and it is talking about when you're cleared at 6 weeks and what it actually means. It's my favorite subject. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't wait for this. Yay.
And also what it doesn't mean.
Yeah. Yay.
Because
Nuances.
there's a lot more that hasn't happened by 6 weeks than it then has happened and completed and is done by 6 weeks.
Totally.
Right?
Yep.
And 6 weeks really is sort of that widely known, commonly accepted frame of reference for clearance. It's like this magic line that you cross and poof.
Yeah. After 9 months of being pregnant and then giving birth.
Right? 10 months, 40 weeks, right?
Yeah, true.
Right?
Yeah.
We've got 10 months of, I mean, it's almost a year. And it's a dramatic change in weight, shape, center of gravity. You know, birth itself, no matter how it goes, is creates trauma to our tissues in our body, right? Birth doesn't have to be traumatic. But you better believe those tissues have endured some things.
Trauma is such a buzzword these days. It doesn't always have to be big and scary.
You know, but if we look at these tissues have been stressed and stretched and challenged, and there is swelling and inflammation that is part of the healing process for these tissues. And I think everybody's like, bam, you hit 6 weeks and I'm cleared for exercise, I'm cleared for sex, I'm recovered from birth and pregnancy. I'm like, I'll give you recovered from birth at 6 weeks, right? Like bleeding should be done, hopefully. Uterus has shrunk down, stitches have healed, tissue, no longer feels bruised and traumatized. Like, I'll give you that at 6 weeks.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Everything
And that's
else,
what they check at that 6 week provider appointment majority of the time, right? That is their check-in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They want to make sure that mentally and emotionally you're stable. We're not seeing any crazy hormone fluctuations. We don't need to get some mental health support on board. That we're not seeing any instability there. We are checking to ensure that, yes, we have not retained placenta. We've stopped bleeding. Size and position of uterus feels normal for 6 weeks. Most of the time that's happening through an internal pelvic exam. Not always. This is a trend. I don't know. I don't know if it's actually a change in policy or procedure. But I am seeing fewer and fewer patients are actually getting an internal pelvic exam at that 6 week postpartum checkup.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the reasoning for it is.
Yeah, I'm not either.
I don't know if I feel like at that point I was always told your cervix is closed. Yay. I think it's supposed to be. What they're not evaluating is truly evaluating position of organs to rule in or rule out a prolapse. They're not evaluating the tone, tension, anything for the pelvic floor musculature. There's no functional evaluation, right? And they're usually talking about birth control. Yep. Because they really don't want you getting pregnant again in 2 or 3 months.
Yeah. Which is actually healthy for you to not get pregnant that quickly. There are other ways. Yep. But, if it happens, tools in their toolbox.
Yes. If it happens or you choose to do so, then okay.
Yep.
But when we look at the physical recovery, when we look at nutritional restoration for all of the minerals and nutrients that are depleted through the growth of another human.
And an organ and new breast tissue.
Yes. Your ability to continue to produce breast milk for your newborn. getting pregnant in the next 12 months isn't ideal from a functional and physiological standpoint. That's typically what's getting covered. And there might be some other things that get touched on there if you're asking questions, or if there are any specifics to if you had a cesarean birth, they're likely going to look at your incision. That might be all, but you know, so there can be some nuances here, but I think that sort of just with the birth care providers in pregnancy, a lot of patients are relying on them to be the end all be all for all the evaluations, all the exams, all the information, all the possibilities that could ever happen. That cannot be the role that they play. That's a lot of pressure on one person. So I think it's kind of the same on the flip side of this pregnancy and birth and the 6-week postpartum, that's really what they're evaluating, what they're looking for. That's what's expected of them. That's what's required of them. That's kind of the standard. And there might be some who do more and there might be some who do less. But anything and everything can't get covered there. Right? You can get through 6 weeks and feel really stable emotionally and hormonally. And then at 8 weeks or 12 weeks, something could change. And just because at 6 weeks, they said, you don't have postpartum depression, you don't have baby blues, doesn't mean it can't happen later. Just because your stitches were feeling good, and then you have intercourse at 7 weeks and all of a sudden that same area is hurting and burning and is swollen again. Just because it was okay a week ago doesn't mean we don't reach out to anybody and talk about what's happening now. Bleeding stopped, bleeding started again. It's probably, if you're breastfeeding, it's probably not your first postpartum period at 8 weeks. Like it might be, but
probably
not. Somebody needs to see what's going on. Right. So I think that's where, you know, we often are very fortunate to be involved with patients before 6 weeks and after 6 weeks. And I feel like we have a unique ability to kind of bridge the gap between what got covered and what didn't. What's happening that you have questions about or didn't get answers about. And really setting a baseline for what is normal. Right. Your provider sets the baseline for you for what's normal in terms of what they're assessing at that 6 week postpartum visit. But there's so many things where you now don't have a baseline for what's normal. Or sometimes I will hear them say that something is normal at 6 weeks. And I always say, until when? Like, is this your new normal? Is this permanent? Did we nick something in a surgery and now this is permanent? Or has it been getting progressively better for 6 weeks, but it hasn't resolved and it's still normal, but it should be gone by 12 weeks? And if it's not, then we seek help. Right. So I do think kind of setting a baseline for what's really common in this phase versus what is still considered normal. And at what point is it no longer considered normal? And if it's still happening, who are we going to talk to? To decide what can be done about it.
Absolutely.
So,
and that's part of what we educate about a lot in our clinic is, you know, yes, we got that 6 week all clear. How we describe it is acute recovery from birth is 6 weeks. Yay. Now we're building our foundations from that next like 6 to 12 weeks in through there after we get that all clear. Because your body really isn't ready for high impact exercise, jumping, running, doing all these types of things that do impact your core and pelvic floor stability. It's not there yet.
Not yet.
And exactly, right? Yet is always the thing. Doesn't mean we can't get there, but it's not quite there yet. And yes, we can do stuff when you're home, bonding with baby. We can work on breathing exercises. We can work on brain body connection with your deep core and getting, you know, that kind of like, all right, how do I diaphragmatic breathe again? What does that feel like? How do I stabilize? Blah, blah. We can start going through that in a very gentle way in the first 6 weeks. There's stuff you can do in bed. There's stuff you can do while you're breastfeeding. But that doesn't mean we're quite ready for a pretty high impact exercise right after we get that 6 week all clear.
Yeah. And I mean, in the frame of like return to movement, I will often say this, just as you likely reduced the intensity of your exercise or your weights or the length of your run as your pregnancy progressed, now we are going to gradually build that back up. We don't when we look at 10 months of pregnancy in this 6 weeks, we're at almost exactly 12 months.
Yeah.
We've had a calendar year. And I think there's this expectation of I hit 6 weeks and I will be where I was 1 year before.
Yeah.
That I can jump right back into doing everything I did before I was pregnant. And so I'm like, this isn't actually a year. This is probably closer to 2.5 years. This whole comprehensive getting pregnant to, I want to say back to your pre-baby, but where you finally have the potential to be at that weight, to have a return to strength, to be able to challenge your body in a lot of different ways without risking injury or compensation. That's a 2 to 2.5 year journey.
Yeah.
And it also lines up for a lot of people with getting pregnant again.
Yeah.
So we often have 5-10 years where we're in it. Right. And so then you get through 10 years of that and can't understand why you get back to where, with or without kids, at 35, your body will not be what it was at 25.
Yep.
So I think it's one, setting an expectation that there isn't anything at 6 week postpartum that should or will look and feel like it did 1 year prior.
Yep.
Right. And it's not just, oh, my body has changed. Oh, I birthed a baby. Yes.
Yeah.
If you already believe that and embrace that, awesome.
Yeah.
That's not most of the messaging that women are getting.
Yeah.
Pre-baby
body back. Yay.
Yeah.
Like, that's actually impossible.
It's impossible.
Because you did have a baby.
Yes.
Pre-baby body is different than post-baby body in the terms of just our, not the fact that like we can't lose weight and that we're supposed to just be in this like uncomfortable state where we don't feel like ourselves, but your body is inherently different and forever changed.
Yes. And it's the feel like ourselves, that connection, that's the piece.
Exactly.
Because I think for a lot of people, it's not just that it looks different. It's not just that my clothes fit differently, right? Because there are people who will get back to pre-baby weight, sometimes even lower.
Yeah.
And it's not that. It's not about how it looks. It is about how it feels.
Yep.
And it's about whether or not you feel comfortable in your body.
Yep.
So it's this disconnection, right? And it's because when we look at what happens physiologically and hormonally and emotionally in that 12 months, it's not a rubber band that snaps back. You are fundamentally changed.
Yes.
Your brain chemistry is different.
Yep.
Your body has done an amazing thing that will very likely be capable of doing everything it was doing before, but the pathway through which it does it now has to be different.
Yep.
And so it's, if we can reframe, right, shift the mindset around, it's not a return, right? It's a reemergence, right? Like you are coming through better, more knowledge, more experience, more capacity than you had before.
Evolved human.
Yes. And so I think if even just that shift of, it's not about that you can't, it's that like we have to relearn how to do things in this body.
And let's do it well.
Yes. Let's do it with intention.
Yep.
I think one of the things that we'll see often is, oh, this influencer, or oh, my sister-in-law, or after my last pregnancy, right? Your body is your own frame of reference.
Yeah.
Things are slower, things are harder, things aren't going back, things aren't moving forward, right? Like we're hitting something and I'm like, so it's not always one step forward, one step forward, one step forward, right? It's not always linear.
Yeah.
Not for each individual person and not for each individual pregnancy. And so I think if we're finding information through, sometimes this is through social media, right? Or it is through sharing conversations with friends.
Yeah.
There is a lot of calm that can come from being in a community of other people who are dealing with some of the same issues as you.
Absolutely.
Right. And it's not that misery loves company.
Yeah.
It's that it's nice to not feel alone in it. I think there's a lot of aspects of postpartum where people very much feel alone.
Postpartum isolation is something that does not get talked about enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so what I always say when we look at getting patients in community, whether it's in a class or a support group, is that there are often light bulbs and realizations that happen. And sometimes it's that you feel alone and isolated and like there's something wrong with you and something's going wrong. And why is this so hard? And you get into a room and you're like, oh, it's not just me.
Yeah.
This is actually really common.
Yeah.
And you immediately feel a little bit better. It hasn't changed your reality, but it has changed the lens through which you're viewing your reality.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be very calming and very reassuring.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's the complete opposite.
Yeah.
That you think that this struggle is completely normal and that there's nothing to be done and you just have to suffer through it.
Yeah.
And then you get into a room of people who are not having the same experience you're having and you're like, oh, maybe I should talk to somebody about this. Maybe I should ask for help.
Yep.
Maybe I do need some support and this isn't actually how this is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And same thing. It can immediately feel a little bit better because you no longer feel helpless.
Yeah.
This no longer feels out of control. I mean, that's always one of our goals with community.
Yes.
It's not just warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
You know, hang out, make friends. We want that too.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to be said for having a frame of reference for what's happening with you, but also at the same time, not comparing yourself, your success, your healing, your milestones are your own.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so just like milestones with babies, there is a range of what's normal for postpartum healing. There's a range of what's normal.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that impact your range, the type of birth you had, how many pregnancies you've had, issues in your body, injuries, things that you brought into the pregnancy. It's not always going to be linear and that's okay.
Yep.
I think something we frequently find ourselves explaining is that Relaxin doesn't just wash out with the placenta. If you don't just have a baby and poof, everything snaps back to normal.
Your progesterone maybe, but your Relaxin maybe not.
It remains elevated 10 to 12 weeks. I've had some patients where it was like 6 months before we really felt like their soft and connective tissue structures had stabilized.
Yeah.
So that 6 months was a lot harder for them, right? Like what they were capable of physically and how they felt in their bodies was delayed compared to what we typically see with the average patient. And some people, 6 weeks postpartum and they feel great, no signs of abdominal separation. They've got great core activation. Like their bodies are ready for challenge. Yeah. Right. So
still not the same challenge as when you were not pregnant.
No, we don't go from 0 running to a marathon at 6 weeks postpartum. Yes. But I have had patients who, returning to running was really, really important for them.
Yeah.
They typically start with me and start with pelvic floor PT within 2 weeks postpartum.
Beautiful. Snaps for that.
Yeah. And some of them do that. And it's like, nope, not yet, not yet, not yet. Maybe they're there at 8 weeks or 10 weeks or 12 weeks.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of thought and intention that went into getting there. Yeah. Faster.
And that's the thing. Yeah. It's the intention behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Versus I'm just going to assume at 6 weeks I get cleared for exercise so I can start running again.
Yeah.
And we see patients who didn't have a prolapse and now they do.
Yep.
Patients who made it all the way through their pregnancy with no abdominal separation, no diagnosable DR.
Yeah. And
now at 10 weeks, we have a 2-finger DR because the tissues are not stable and we challenged them in a way that they weren't ready to meet in a challenge they weren't ready to meet. Right. So I think that there are some great things out there for self-evaluation, self-education, trying to figure out what's happening with your breath. Is your breath coordinated with your pelvic floor, your diaphragm, and your pelvic floor moving together? Is your pelvic floor capable of withstanding a challenge? Can your body maintain intra-abdominal pressure with this challenge? Right. These are all the things we're evaluating when we've got them in the office. Yep. There are a lot of people that will evaluate this for you. If you don't have access to these people or you've asked and it's not been evaluated, then okay, there are some self-assessment things. But these are the things that we want to consider. Yeah. And we want to get a baseline for where they are. Yep. One of the things I hear really frequently from patients is, oh, like my core is turned off. My core is weak.
Non-existent.
Is non-existent.
I can't feel it.
Yeah. And I'm like, it's there.
Yep.
It the reflexive nature of the core being turned off is a safety mechanism for the end of pregnancy.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the reflexive nature of the core. Yeah, I think that you explain it so well. And I think it's such an important conversation because we don't really talk about it a lot,
and
ever.
I don't think most people, myself included, even realize that it's there or what it is until you're paying attention. And so one of the things I realized in my first pregnancy was how frequently I activate my core to stabilize and protect my own body when I adjust. Right. And like, I'm so thankful to have learned positions and postures and mechanisms to keep me safe while I'm doing a very physical job. But I didn't even realize that I was doing them. Until at some point in my pregnancy, I could feel my core fire. And I was like,
what is that?
Have I always been doing that? Like, is that a new thing? And I was like, no, I think I've always been doing it. But we often do have a heightened awareness in pregnancy of what's our pelvic floor doing? What are our abs doing? Oh, I can't breathe. What is my diet? Right? Like, it's as these areas and tissues become challenged, suddenly we're getting more messages from those tissues to the brain, and we have a heightened awareness about it. Right? So some patients are kind of in tune with this and some aren't. But for those who do not have an awareness prior to pregnancy, the core responds to stabilize our skeleton and to keep us safe and prevent injury. And so I think one of the easiest ways, at least for me to understand it and how I typically explain it to patients, is I'm like, we can pretend we're in middle school gym class and we're throwing a medicine ball back and forth, right? You know, it's heavy. Your brain sees it coming and there's this bracing or this activation, right? The core is like, okay, I'm ready, right? These muscles fire. It's the same, like, I've never done boxing. I've never taken a punch. But
I actually used to do it as part of my cross training when I was a swimmer.
So, I mean, there are a lot of people who've done boxing or martial arts or something. And it's like, it's kind of the same thing. The core activates to protect your organs, right? To
internal organs need protection.
To create this firm wall between this incoming object, right? Potential injury inducing object and your soft, squishy parts that need protection. And when we look at the abdominal cavity, it's really the only part that doesn't have a skeletal structure, right? We've got the spine in the back. We have the rib cage protecting the heart and the lungs. We don't have any other structure here other than muscle and fascia and other tissue. And so when you have a core that's awake, which everyone does, your nervous system will activate your core. That's the reflex, right? When you exercise and you're healthy and your core is strong, it's a little more obvious. Right? Than someone who doesn't exercise or hasn't done any core training on purpose. But still, if somebody throws you a medicine ball, you're gonna catch it, and your body is gonna do what it needs to do to not topple over with the ball. Right? Like, maybe your six pack doesn't pop out when you catch it, but did you fall over? No, your core activated. Right? Your body did what it needed to do to stabilize your skeletal structure and hold you upright. So that's the reflexive nature in the core. And when we look at the core, we're talking about the diaphragm, we're talking about the pelvic floor, we're talking about the abdominal musculature, we are talking about fine little muscles around the lumbar spine. And so this is the container, right, of the core itself. The core isn't just your abs. People say that a lot, like core exercises. I'm like, show me. And I'm like, those are abdominal exercises. The abdominal muscles are part of your core. This isn't a comprehensive core exercise. This is an isolated core exercise.
Which I think you educate so well. Like, when we first met, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I knew that, but articulating it in that specific way, I think really helps people understand, like, oh yeah, you're right.
It's the continuing to think about it as a whole, not in isolation, because it is impacted as a whole in pregnancy. There is not one part of the core that is not impacted in pregnancy. And each part of the core has to yield and stretch and lengthen and make space
Yep.
in a different way.
Has to accommodate for what is inevitably going to continue to happen.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a being, there is a life form in there that is doubling in size. It is going to continue to take up more space.
Yep.
And the core has to accommodate for that growth
Mm-hmm.
continuously and ideally in a relatively balanced way, so that nothing overcompensates.
Mm-hmm.
So there are patterns where we will see, you know, if the abdominal wall is not able to yield,
mm-hmm.
we tend to see that the diaphragm and the pelvic floor are what are going to compensate for that.
Yep.
When we have a pelvic floor and a diaphragm that don't or can't yield, we tend to see the abdominal cavity or the abdominal wall is going to be who compensates.
Yep.
The lumbar spine is a spine.
Yep.
It is bone.
Yep.
It will never yield in the
Mm-hmm.
same way as these other tissues.
Yep.
And so it doesn't mean that there isn't compensation
Mm-hmm.
or accommodation that occurs in the spine.
Yeah. But you have your QL and your paraspinal muscles and things like that.
Yes.
That
And so
supportive.
we will often see, psoas and QL are often what is picking up the slack.
Yep.
We will see some tension there, but also it's not usually just one thing either.
Yeah.
So we look at the core as a whole, how it responds as each of these tissues are lengthening and stretching and compensating for any of these imbalances that exist.
Mm-hmm.
Their ability to reflexively respond is impacted.
Yeah.
And so when we do look at the end of pregnancy where these tissues are challenged to their maximum, they cannot respond. And so if that reflex remains as active,
mm-hmm.
the potential for injury to these tissues is significantly higher.
Yeah.
So, you know, another way that I like to explain it to people is think about a bicep curl.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody can think about holding a dumbbell and doing a bicep curl,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where we don't start a bicep curl with our arm out completely straight and with our biceps in their most lengthened position.
Yeah.
That's not where they're strong.
Yeah.
Right? That's not the safest place for them to initiate a contraction.
Mm-hmm.
That's where injury can occur.
Yeah.
Right. So, and in the same vein, if we're already all the way in our shortened position, it's really hard to change muscle tissue by doing this repetitively.
Yeah.
Right. Neutral.
Yep.
This is where we want to start. You can go a little further or come in a little closer, right?
Yeah.
But the closer we are to neutral, typically it's where we get the easiest activation. It's where it's safest.
Mm-hmm.
We're less likely to injure any of these tissues.
Yeah.
And so that's the goal with the core,
mm-hmm.
is if we can keep as much balance here as possible. It doesn't guarantee no injury. It doesn't guarantee no compensation.
Yep.
But it reduces the likelihood that we have injury.
Yeah.
And so there's all of that. And then there's, no matter how balanced things are, we are still going to see that musculature and that reflex work in a diminished capacity at the end of pregnancy.
Yep.
And so to expect that, okay, baby's out, everything's back on, everything's where it was before. No
way.
It's, if we get past 12 weeks and we no longer have Relaxin on board, now we're at a place where we can begin challenging,
mm-hmm.
right? We can begin building back up to where we were before pregnancy.
Yep.
I personally am not a fan of doing really intense or high impact exercise before 12 weeks. Same. Because I've seen too many injuries happen in that time frame.
Yeah, same.
No matter how good people felt, we're not stable yet.
Yeah.
And if the joints aren't stable, what we're willing and able to withstand without injury is significantly diminished.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And there have been people who've returned early and not had injuries.
Yep.
And I've had people at 16 weeks still get injured, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, this isn't linear. This isn't across the board.
Yeah.
I think for most people, if you don't have a team that can evaluate for your readiness for you,
mm-hmm.
if you don't have a postpartum certified exercise person who understands the nuances of return to exercise that can evaluate this for you, start really slow.
Mm-hmm.
Always give yourself 2 to 3 days in between to evaluate, not just how do you feel in the moment, how do you feel in the 12 to 24 hours after, how do you feel 72 hours after?
Yep.
I always experienced delayed onset soreness from exercise.
Dum, 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 dum.
So yeah, like, I mean, today could be like a raging leg day and tomorrow I'm like, yeah. The day after that, Jamie's not walking. Nope. Nope.
That's for me too.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, the 12 to 24 hours is where we're likely to see evidence of potential injury.
Yeah.
But it could be up to 72 hours before we're starting to experience any of the, I don't want to say symptoms, right? Any of the ways that our body compensated or any of the communication from our body that we weren't ready to do that.
Yeah.
I'm like, if you did it and you go 3 days afterwards and you feel great, awesome,
Great.
do it again.
Yep.
Right? Like, we're not automatically, I do think there's a little bit of this acceleration of like, I'm going to up my weights or reps every single time. I'm going to run further every single time. I'm going to add, 5-10 minutes to my Peloton ride every time. I'm like, give it a couple, right? I'm like, give it 3 or 4, like a full week.
Yeah.
Right? There is a big difference between being sore.
Yeah.
And things hurt. This doesn't feel good. I feel more pressure now.
Yeah.
I'm, there's discomfort in my ab. Soreness is uncomfortable, but pain and discomfort is different than soreness. If you don't know the difference, please do some research. Talk to somebody, because you need to be able to delineate the difference in your body and determining what is it capable of and what can I do without injury. Because our goal with everyone across the board with postpartum healing, whether it's exercise or whatever it is that it's all forward motion. Yeah. Right. That everything is moving towards this goal. It doesn't have to be 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Yeah. It doesn't have to be, we look at long term. Like, I've had people who are like, I want to be able to, my family does the Disney Marathon every year, and I want to be able to do this 11 months postpartum. Like, we have a very clear goal. Yep. How do we get you there? It doesn't mean you're running a half marathon a month from now. Yeah. Training looks different. Yep. Right. And it's, people who are like, you've done like a couch to 5K, right? It's this really gradual thing. It probably does need to be really gradual. Yeah. And if we keep our eye on the prize of the long-term goal, it can be all positive growth and progress up to that point. If we're not doing it intentionally and we're jumping in and we're doing too much too fast, we're doing the wrong exercise. The exercise that was your favorite and worked really well for you before pregnancy may not be the exercise that's your favorite and works really well for you now. Yeah. Right. I do see that a lot too. Like, this is how I was eating and working out before, and I'm not losing the weight, or I'm not building muscle as quickly as I was before. Yes. Are you still breastfeeding? Because that's a factor. Absolutely. What does your diet look like? Right. Are you eating to support weight loss, or are you eating to support muscle growth?
Or are you eating to support a life?
Yeah. Like, there's so many different things. Yeah. And so, we do not see a ton of like really competitive athletes in our practice. I would say we commonly see what I think is the average American woman of, I do want to exercise regularly. It might be walking 5 days a week, or it might be going to a kickboxing class 3 days a week, but it's either self-directed fitness, it's group fitness. Maybe they're at a gym, maybe they're doing an app. But their goals are usually a little bit more along the lines of, this is for mental health. This is some me time. Yes, I'd like to be a little bit leaner and a little bit stronger. Yeah. But it's not, they're not competitive athletes. They're not moving back into a sport. Right. Yeah. So that's going to be a little bit different. Yeah. I would say it's kind of generalized American fitness, right? Where there's gyms and there's boutique fitness and there's clubs and, there's all of this. I think that's what most people are doing. And I think it's important for people to understand that the majority of everyone across the board doesn't have prenatal and postnatal specific training. Yeah. That's chiropractors included. Yes. Right. When we look at our specialists, you hired an OB or midwife, right? You hired a specialist. There are people out there who've gone above and beyond to get some additional education and training around the nuances of what does postpartum healing look like. Yeah. And we often say this a lot when we have conversations, but also even like in print material, right? Like in brochures in the office, on our website, we talk about complete recovery. Yeah. right? Complete recovery is a wildly different animal than what most people are experiencing postpartum right now.
Absolutely.
And when I say that, what I mean is your body physically, mentally is capable of everything it was capable of leading up to your pregnancy.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it looks exactly the same, but if you weren't constipated before you had a baby, constipation shouldn't be your new normal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
If you didn't have pain with intercourse before you had a baby, pain with intercourse shouldn't be your new normal.
Yep.
Right? If
leakage or anything like that, right?
Yeah. If you used to be able to watch Bambi without crying, like what makes everybody cry?
Yeah.
And now every time you see a commercial about elder care, you're sobbing.
Oh, that's just me all the time.
So some people are, right? Some people are
cryers,
some people are not. But if you used to be a crier and now you can't cry, that's maybe not your new norm. And if you never used to cry and now you cry at the drop of a hat, maybe that shouldn't be your new norm.
Yeah.
Right. So it's I think when we look at what are your capacity mentally and emotionally expands so much when you become a parent. And so I think that it often means we take on more. But I think that our physical capacity often feels very diminished in comparison to what it was before.
Totally.
And it shouldn't have to, right? Like if you don't ever want to work out the way you did before you had a baby, that's okay.
Totally fine. Yeah.
And if you loved that and you want to get back to that, and it's an important part of who you are for your mental and physical health, how do we get you there as quickly and safely and completely as possible?
Yes.
So that there's not a sacrifice, because there's a whole lot of people out there that are doing what they were doing before, but there's a cost.
Yes.
So, well, yes, I do this, but now I leak when I run, or now I do this, but I have pain in my neck, pain in my shoulders, pain in my hips.
Yep.
Right. That's the cost. I'm willing to bear the burden of this cost because this is important to me.
Yep.
The cost doesn't always have to be paid. Right. It doesn't, it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be. Right. And that's like, I haven't gone through it myself yet. So, but we've walked with a lot of
You've
women
witnessed
who have.
it. Yes. And
and for me, it's not because you're weak and fragile. It's because your body did something so incredible, but also had to make so many changes to allow this process to happen.
Yep.
And we have to treat your recovery in that exact way. Just as we modified throughout your pregnancy, we are modifying throughout postpartum so you can build back your strength. That's the biggest thing there. It's like when I was a Division I swimmer, when I had goals that I wanted to meet for strength and things like that, we started small, because if you go from 0 to 10, your risk for injury is so great, even if, right, like you had been doing that exact same movement before. I remember there was this one program I did, and we called it Uber squats and like Uber pull-ups and stuff like that. And it's every week you add 2 pounds.
Yeah.
2 pounds. That's it. You do the movement body weight for 2 weeks, and then you just add in a 2 pound weight. Great. And then you do pull-ups and like dips and all that kind of stuff. Right. But like every week it's repetitive.
Yep.
It can be boring.
Yep.
And it is something that you are working towards your goal for. So that's your motivation, but it's not always fun.
Yeah.
But
it works.
It works.
It works.
I did it for a month. I just did that for a month straight. And oh my gosh, I got so strong in such a safe way. And I felt so good in my body. Like I was doing pull-ups with a 55-pound plate around my waist.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
And it's the same with postpartum. Just because we had our baby doesn't mean you are ready after 6 weeks to jump back into that intensity.
Yeah.
And it's that slow build that is, we feel that compression and constriction because we just want to get to the finish line.
Yeah.
But that finish line is still always, it's kind of like a moving goalpost, right?
Yeah.
Like fitness isn't this like I crossed the line kind of thing all the time.
Yep.
Majority of the time, these are moms that want to be able to pick up their kids without throwing out their back.
Yep.
You're doing all these weird bendy, twisty movements. You're on the ground more often than not. You're in this cradled position, because I call it our adorable baby syndrome, because we're like, oh my gosh, you're so cute, whether we're breastfeeding or bottle feeding or just holding our babies, right?
Staring at them all the time.
All the time. You get nothing done. I don't know how anybody gets anything done. They're so cute. But we have to take all of that into consideration too, because your life and what you're doing every day is also now very different.
Yes.
And your movements every day are very different.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that we haven't even touched on that yet, right?
Yep.
So we're just talking about recovery.
Yeah.
Right. Physical recovery, talking about emotional shifts, identity shifts, but physically what your day now looks like is often so wildly different than what it looked like before.
Yeah.
So the majority of patients who are experiencing discomfort in their bodies in pregnancy, it's lower body. It's usually low back, sciatic, glutes, pubic joint, something like that.
Yeah.
Then we see these moms postpartum and they're like, it moved. It shifted.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's so much time spent in this flexed position that does create a lot of strain and tension across the upper body. And so as someone who experienced headaches and neck pain and things like that before pregnancy, I was kind of hyper aware and vigilant about not going back down that path postpartum. And I will sometimes say that to patients who, if you have a history of neck pain, we want to get ahead of this, because I have people who've never had neck pain and headaches in their lives, and it's now the biggest factor in how they feel day to day. Then there's looking at, okay, well, what did we bring in? But how you use your body every day changes a lot.
Yeah.
If you are not someone who had a desk job and is accustomed to sitting a lot, you're going to spend a whole lot of time sitting and laying down in those first few weeks.
Yeah.
You should, because you need to heal.
Yep. Rest is good.
But it's very different, right? It's like going on bed rest. Like everybody's like, my body feels terrible. Like, how is it? I'm just laying around all day. I'm like, that's why your body feels terrible.
Yeah.
And then as we get through this initial healing phase and we do start moving more, whether it's intentional exercise or just that, we've hit 3 months and I'm going back to work, or I now feel more comfortable getting out of the house with my baby. We've got a routine. This doesn't take 2 hours.
Yeah.
Like, we've got a nap schedule. We've got a feeding schedule. Now that what that daily movement in your body looks like is very different. It is a lot of bending over. It is a lot of picking up. It is a lot of lifting. Babies don't get lighter, right? There is this naturally growing. People always joke about their strong biceps because they hold their car seat. And I'm like, yeah, that's strong. But let's talk about the tension in your traps and your scap and, all and these other, like now there's this compensatory tension. It's not just like, yay, bicep curls, So there's that piece to contend with, because now we're not just trying to return to exercise and build strength in a way that is known and familiar. We also have to take into consideration, how are we offsetting the new tensions, the new strains, the new patterns that we're developing, so that it's not causing pain when we're doing this type of movement or exercise.
Absolutely.
I feel like that we hear that a lot too. Like, I don't understand why I have this pain. Like, I never had this before. And it's like, because something's different.
Yep.
And your body's finding a way to get the task done by whatever means are available to it.
Absolutely.
Our bodies are smart. It's why we see compensation patterns so frequently.
Yeah.
Patterns.
Make mistakes.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah. And patterns serve a purpose. They're helping you complete that task. But patterns don't come without problems over time. And so I think that's got to be part of that consideration as well.
Absolutely.
So if you are returning to exercise, or you're seeing a trainer, or you're seeing us, or a PT or anybody, and there isn't consideration given to what does your day-to-day look like, right? Like, how did you get here? Especially if you didn't have this before. How did you get here? We have to take that in consideration. What changes or modifications can we make so that it's just forward progress from here on out?
Exactly. Yeah. It's a big conversation, and our one of our biggest passions is postpartum, because in the United States, it's, all this prenatal care up front. It's amazing. You're going to weekly check-ins towards the end of your pregnancy, and then you have your baby, and then they send you home with a packet of all the things that could go wrong and when to call them, which majority of the time you're not going to read or remember what you read if you do read it. And then they say, okay, we'll see you in 6 weeks unless any one of these things happens. Okay. Yep. Sayonara, see you later. And then the next appointment you have is with your pediatrician.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of it, right?
And that's not an appointment about you.
Exactly.
Right. Yep. You have your 6 weeks. And then for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, assuming that a plan is made for birth control.
Yeah.
We'll see you at your next annual exam.
Yeah.
And a year from now.
Exactly. Yeah. And we are such big advocates for just the same amount, if not more care in postpartum too. Because again, your life is significantly changed and we want to be able to support you through all that, just like we did throughout your pregnancy too, because all of the shift goes to baby, but you deserve care too.
Yes.
You deserve it. And we do get into this sacrifice kind of mentality. Like, I just want to make sure my baby's okay. I hear that a lot with moms who come in postpartum and it's just an appointment for their baby and not for them. And I always say, okay, well, when are we scheduling your appointment? Because you can't give from an empty cup.
Yeah.
And part of this recovery is alignment and adjusting and making sure your soft tissues are doing what we want them to do and preventing injury and helping you build back that reflexive core diaphragm, and then also helping you build back your strength and connection to it, right? All those foundations are just as important.
And ensuring their nervous system is regulated.
Exactly.
So the baby's nervous system can stay
right.
regulated.
It's a dyad for a reason.
Yeah.
So we not have to, but we would love to be able to support you through that entire process too, because it takes up to about 2 years to fully recover from the entirety of pregnancy and birth.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, we've been working on developing some things for ongoing prenatal support.
Yeah.
And what we find through that is there's a certain amount of predictability, right? We see a lot of the same things. Most people can expect the same questions to be asked or the same things to be brought up in specific visits based on, it's always like, how many weeks are you?
Yeah.
Right? Like, we don't measure fundal height. We're not measuring baby's development like would happen with your birth provider, but we know that certain things happen by or are most likely to happen at certain points in your pregnancy. It is not like that postpartum.
Nope.
There is very little predictability, actually, I would say, in the challenges that each person faces because it is so nuanced, even more so than pregnancy. Yeah. So, there is this absence of ongoing care, which is problematic in and of itself. It's not any one person's fault, but we don't have a system right now that supports women well after having babies. And so I think part of the challenge in that is it's hard to systematize postpartum recovery. Totally. Right. And so, you're if the only person on your team is your provider, then they're still your go-to. Right. And be asking them if you feel that you need support with something, whether it's mental or physical, that's a good place to start to ask. Who is the person? I think, nowadays there are a lot of people in social media on the internet that are out here talking about this. If you're listening to this podcast or any other podcast or seeing stuff on social media and nobody's local, right? Start looking for local resources. So if you're like, that's what I need. Well, you don't need to fly to Denver to get it, probably. But I did have a colleague, we did a training together, and she did have awareness that she was having issues with the pelvic floor. And she existed in the equestrian world and was highly competitive and wanted to return to riding after having her first. And was told at her 6-week postpartum that she had a prolapse and she should never get on a horse again. And that was it.
That's heartbreaking.
It was a definitive diagnosis with no hope for recovery, no treatment recommendations, no nothing. And she was like, I refuse to accept that.
Yeah. Good for
and
her.
So went on a journey of self-discovery, saw like 6 or 7 different pelvic floor therapists who all gave her widely varying information, some of which she found helpful, but still wasn't really getting resolution of the issues that she was experiencing. And that's how we ended up in a pelvic floor training together, where she had essentially kind of did it on her own, right? Through education, through exercise and things like that. So, she lives in a very rural place. Like, she was traveling really far to even see this many different therapists. So I think there are resources out there, right? And I think that that's part of the challenge for some people in postpartum is there's isolation. We don't know who to ask. Maybe we're being told on social media that we should be here and we're here and this feels like failure. And so I'm just going to not engage. Or we feel like, I'm having these issues and I'm seeing that this is really common, but I don't have the money to do this online program, or there isn't this person is a very specific type of provider and that doesn't exist anywhere near me. So that's not accessible to me. Right. So I'm just not going to engage. We are hopefully coming into the golden age of postpartum support, right? Like 20 years ago when I started practicing in Denver, they're trying to find pelvic floor therapists was a daunting task. There's a lot more of them now. When I moved to Colorado, I think there were 3 Webster certified chiropractors here because the certification course had never been held here. So there are a lot more people now who have training and expertise and specialize in these areas. And so I hope that they're able to investigate these avenues and get support and realize that postpartum healing is not simple. It's not predictable. It's not linear. But it's absolutely possible.
Totally.
Complete recovery is possible. With the right guidance and some patience.
Oh, I love it. Such a good topic. They always are. I love them. But this one's like really close to my heart just because of how many of the same scenarios we see often in our office, in our practice. But with that being said, we'll end here today, but just kind of a call to action for you guys. If you are here in Denver and you're looking for support, even if it's a resource that we don't have under our roof at Belly Bliss, we can absolutely find the resources for you and refer you to somebody. If you're not in Denver and you're looking for these resources, still reach out to us. We can try to find someone for you. If you have questions about anything that we cover today, what I want you to take away is that you deserve care in postpartum just like you deserve care in your pregnancy. It is something that we are very passionate about, and we hope that this is a really helpful episode for you. We'll see you next time. If you found today's episode helpful, you can subscribe, share it with a friend, or leave a review. It helps this podcast reach the families who need it most. You can find us at Belly Bliss in Denver and online for resources, workshops, and support. Until next time, take care of your body and trust its wisdom.